Have you ever stopped to think about how scholars actually study something as massive and as ancient as the Old Testament? I mean, we're not talking about a single book here. This is a whole library of scrolls, poems, and histories written over 1,000 years. It's this incredible collection that's been captivating and frankly puzzling people for centuries. So, how on earth do they do it?
Well, today we're going to open up the Scholar's Toolbox and take a peek inside. First, we'll see how they decode the original text, getting the words right. Then we're going to rebuild the world these texts actually came from. After that, we'll dive into the big ideas and the literary genius behind it all. And finally, we'll see how this field is, believe it or not, still changing every single day.
And this really is the central challenge, right? How do you even begin to read a library this old? The languages are ancient, the cultures are totally foreign to us, and the manuscripts we have are copies of copies of copies. It seems almost impossible. But it turns out scholars have developed this really powerful, multi-layered approach to crack the code.
Okay, so first things first. It all begins with the words on the page. Before you can even think about asking what a text means, you have to be as certain as you possibly can about what it actually says. This is the absolute foundation of all Old Testament study. You gotta get the words right.
It's this incredibly meticulous four-step process. Scholars start by painstakingly comparing ancient manuscripts to figure out the most reliable version of the text. From there, they use these amazing specialized dictionaries called lexicons to define every single word. Then they pull out the grammars to understand how the sentences are built. And finally, they use concordances to track how key words and ideas pop up across the entire collection. You really are like a linguistic detective, piecing together the mystery one word at a time.
Now, one of the most critical tools in the whole kit is the lexicon. And let me tell you, this is so much more than Google Translate. A lexicon, like the classic Brown Driver Briggs, gives you the entire universe of a single word. It shows you its root, its full range of meanings, and gives you examples of how it was used in other ancient documents. It's the key to actually thinking in an ancient language, not just swapping out words.
And the toolkit is just huge. Seriously, we're talking about massive multi-volume dictionaries, incredibly dense grammars that map out the entire language, and even powerful computer software that can trace a word's usage in a split second. This whole academic field is built on thousands of scholarly commentaries, where experts from all over the world share their findings. It creates this massive, interconnected web of research.
Okay, so once you've got a good handle on the words themselves, you need to understand the world they came from. And that's where history and archaeology come in. They basically act as our time machine, letting us reconstruct the ancient context these stories were born into.
This timeline really gives you a sense of the epic scale we're dealing with. This is not a short, simple period. You've got Israel's entry into Canaan way back around 1400 BC, then the rise of King David, the kingdom splitting into two, all the way to the catastrophic destructions of the kingdoms by world empires like Assyria and Babylonia. We're covering nearly 1,000 years of history, and every single book was written into a specific moment on this timeline.
You know, a really common misconception is that archaeology is all about proving the Bible. But for scholars, that's not really the goal at all. Archaeology very rarely proves or disproves a specific event in a story. Its real power is in providing the physical context, the pottery, the buildings, the weapons, the food, all the stuff that made up the world the Bible describes.
And this illustrates that point perfectly. Just take the famous walls of Jericho. There's a saying that archaeology is 10% digging and 90% interpretation. And it's so true. Two different scholars can look at the very same excavated walls, and depending on how they interpret the data, the pottery shards, the burn layers, they can come to completely different conclusions about how or even if it lines up with the biblical story.
So, with the text established and the historical context rebuilt, scholars can finally move to the highest level of analysis. This is where we get to ask the big questions about the incredible literary and theological themes that have made this library endure for thousands of years.
As you read across all these diverse books, you start to see these 5 major themes emerge again and again. There's God's ultimate sovereignty over all of history, but also his very real, tangible presence with his people. You see the slow, unfolding fulfillment of his promises, the complex nature of the covenant relationship, and this developing idea of God's kingdom on earth. These ideas are like the theological backbone of the entire Old Testament.
But how these themes are communicated is just as important as the themes themselves. As the great literary scholar Robert Alter puts it, the artistry isn't just fancy window dressing, it's part of the message itself. The way a story is told
the characters it develops, the poetry it uses, all of that is essential to its meaning.
And the literary diversity in here is just staggering. This isn't one type of book, it's a whole library of different styles. You've got these epic prose narratives, beautiful poetry, super detailed genealogies and lists, official letters, deeply personal prayers, and binding legal contracts. Each one of these genres has its own set of rules and needs to be read and understood on its own terms.
So finally, and this is so important to grasp, this is not a finished project. The study of the Old Testament is a living, breathing conversation that has been going on for centuries, and it continues to evolve with every new discovery and every new generation of scholars.
And this conversation has a long formal history. I mean, academic journals dedicated specifically to this field, like the Old Testament Student here, started appearing way back in the 1880s. So scholars have been systematically sharing research and debating these texts in a modern academic way for a very, very long time.
Yeah, that's over 140 years of continuous, documented study. And if anything, it's only accelerating. New books, commentaries, and research papers are getting published every single year, constantly adding new perspectives and asking new questions in this centuries-long conversation.
Which really leaves us with a final, fascinating thought. We've gone from handwritten notes to powerful computer analysis, from basically treasure hunting to precise archaeological science. After all this time, and with all these incredible tools at our disposal, what are the big questions that scholars are still wrestling with today? What mysteries in this ancient library are still just waiting to be unlocked?